We're just about at the end of the seminar, but I can tell you that we're going to go through some valuable and impactful information today. You know, look, we all know that the market is tough right now, but this is one of the most important and pressing issues in our industry today. Retailers are overwhelmed, consumers have never had more choice and options, and distributors are under a constant pressure to perform and drive growth. It's tough, the craft segment is tough, there's a lot of tough dynamics, but tough does not mean impossible. There is so much very real opportunity for the brands that are willing to do the hard work and align their approach with their distribution partners. And that's what I want to talk more about today, is taking your brand from frustration to traction. Okay, quick introduction, like she said, my name's Shane Lohman, founded 5-Star Beverage Group. History of my time in the industry, at the age of 22, I started my own retail beer store in Pittsburgh. Did that for 5 years, decided that I wanted to do something with more growth potential, so I got the very bright idea to start my own independent craft beer wholesaler. The genesis for that, the thought behind it was that at the time, it was 2016, craft beer was evolving rapidly. The brands, the products, but the way that it was being distributed was not. Okay, so built that up for 8 years, ran it, scaled it, and sold it. It was acquired just over a year ago by a couple of wholesalers covering the western half of Pennsylvania. My life has been extended as a result. You know, it gives me a unique value and perspective when working with brand building, because I think so many brands struggle to see things from the side of distributors, and when we can bridge that gap, it can make some real, you know, positive headway. I know firsthand how frustrating and stressful distribution can be. Like I said, it's taken years off of my life, but I also know how rewarding it can be and the level of success that any brand can have when they take the right approach, even in today's market. Before we get too much in depth into the specific tools and strategies, I want to take a quick look at where we're at in the industry. How many of you think that you make great beer? Now, how many of you think that you're not getting enough time, attention, effort, and results from your distribution partners? If you do not solve that problem, it is likely an existential issue for your brand, okay? It is a matter of time for most of you. The landscape has changed. What worked 5 or 10 years ago does not anymore. Shoot, what worked 2 or 3 years ago for a lot of you does not anymore. Novelty is not enough anymore. When we talk about the new releases, the cool cans, the funny names, it's not enough. The most successful brands constantly gush over their distribution partners. They build those powerful relationships, and that is not a coincidence, and I want to give you the tools to make it a reality for yourself and your brand this afternoon. We need to start out by talking about the need for differentiation. The reality of the market is that in the span of a few short years, we went from roughly 1,500 breweries in this country to 10,000, okay? When craft took off, novelty was enough, and it's not anymore, and that's unlikely to come back, at least in the near future, okay? Like I said, that novelty was almost a false positive, because for so long, it gave you the results that you were looking for, and it does not anymore. It's created this differentiation dilemma because consumers are looking for consistent brands that resonate with them, that they can engage with, that they can build that level of trust with, okay? That starts with a strong brand identity that you communicate clearly and consistently. When you rely on that novelty, it will often do the opposite. It does not provide that consistency, and in a crowded market, that becomes a massive problem, okay? Let me give you a tangible example here. Let's say that I go into a bar or restaurant with a woman in her early 30s and we sit down. If she even looks at the beer menu, which is not a guarantee these days, she likely has little desire to spend 10 or 15 minutes scanning through dozens of beer options, looking them up on her phone, Googling flavor profiles, hop combinations, and ABV. When that bartender or server comes over in 2 or 3 minutes, she is going to make her decision likely by scanning that beer list and looking for brands that she has some level of familiarity and trust with, okay? The way that brands build that familiarity and trust is by having that strong brand identity that they communicate clearly and consistently. I'll give you a story. A couple of years ago, I go to Scottsdale with my girlfriend at the time in the spring. If you've never been to Scottsdale, Arizona in the spring, it is heaven on earth. I highly recommend it. So we go to the local BevMo the first day because we want to stock up the Airbnb with drinks for the week. About 15 minutes into being there, she comes and finds me wandering up and down these aisles, asks me if I know what I want yet. And I looked at her and said, I have no idea. I've been staring at all this for 15 minutes. I'm in the industry and I don't know what it is. I've got a headache. I'm gonna grab some Firestone 805. Let's get out of here. If I felt that way and I owned an independent craft beer wholesaler, how do you think the average consumer feels? Consumers have little desire or willingness anymore to sift through thousands of brands, each with dozens of SKUs, with more being added to the pile every week. It's just the reality of the situation, okay? Distributors are looking for brands that offer that clear value and a blueprint to make that value a reality. They're not just looking for them. At this point, they are begging for them, okay? So, how do we create this alignment? The best brands use distribution. It is your most powerful engine for growth. It is not a problem. It is not a roadblock. You would be shocked, or should be shocked, how many brands I talk to, work with, engage with, that treat their distributors like they are a necessary evil, that treat them like they are a constant pain in the butt, and like they are the biggest obstacle to realizing their brand's ultimate success, okay? Distribution is the key to realizing your brand's limitless potential. If you look at the most successful brands in beverage, they have mastered these relationships and use them to drive scale, okay? A key point that I want you to take with you today. Distributors do not build brands from scratch, okay? They scale them. They are force multipliers. They cannot create something out of nothing. You need to have something that's working on some level that they can take and then scale in a market and across markets, but they are not magicians. They cannot create that success and momentum from scratch, and they will not do it. Take a quick look at this graphic. These are a couple of the key elements that you need in place to set up successful distribution relationships. It starts with a brand strategy. We'll get into this more in a few minutes in more depth. But this starts with basic questions. Who are we selling to? Where are we selling to them? How are we selling to them? Okay, once we have that, we need distributor alignment. This is a mistake that so many brands make. They go to a new market and they take the first distributor that says yes, or they will look for the biggest and most successful distributor and do anything they can to get signed up with them. You need to know what your brand's position is in the market. You need to know what your brand's strengths are. Okay? And then you need to look at a distributor and know what their strengths are and what their business priorities are. If there is no alignment there, both parties will struggle to build a happy, healthy, and productive relationship, no matter how bad any of you want it or how hard you work to make it a reality. Okay? Once you have a brand strategy, once you find a distributor that you're aligned with, you put yourself in a position to build a foundation for scalable growth and to empower everybody involved in these relationships to be successful. So again, how do we create that alignment? How do we start, or how do we stop hoping that our distributors just figure it out for us and start empowering them with the tools to be successful with our brand? Starts with a quick understanding of the distribution landscape, okay? We've talked about the need for differentiation. We've talked about how crucial distribution is to driving scale, but we need to take a minute to understand the landscape itself. Because we all know the truth is that this segment, craft beer, is harder than it's ever been. But there is so much opportunity. I know you may think I'm a lunatic. We will get into it though. There is so much opportunity at hand right now for the brands that are willing to build the right approach. Starts with going from hype-driven sales to scalable success. Take a look at that picture on the left. That is of an off-premise retailer of ours outside of Pittsburgh in 2016. On this one retailer shelf alone, there are 10 different SKUs of Evil Twin. When we started Steel City Beer in 2016, novelty was enough. Evil Twin had great beer, they had the cool labels, the funny names. Now take a look at the picture on the right side. This is from another one of our off-premise retailers in early 2024, right before Steel City Beer was acquired. Notice the shift here. Even as a small independent craft wholesaler, we had shifted our priorities and investment into brands that offered us the tools to be successful and a blueprint to create sustainable scale, okay? By the end of my run at running that wholesaler, I would have rather gone out into traffic in rush hour on the highway and laid down than signed up more brands that did not give us those tools and did not empower us to be successful at scale. What this means is, if you have a brand and you are hoping that some magical, mythical craft beer wholesaler falls out of the sky and wants to prioritize your beer because it's the best beer in the whole wide world, and you don't have those tools and that blueprint, it just ain't gonna happen. So, this can be very empowering because what distributors want now is consistency. They want to see that your brand is able to create and build that sustainable growth and give them a clear reason to invest. Let's talk about what a clear reason to invest looks like. You need to know who and what your brand is right now, and you need to know what you want that brand to look like in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years, okay? That empowers you to go to a distributor and say, this is what our brand is now, this is what it can potentially look like, this is the investment that we need from you to make that a reality, okay? That empowers them to make a business decision. It also empowers you because this needs to be a two-way street, okay? It's like dating. I don't want to ruin any relationships here, but if you go out dating and just take the first person that says yes, it is unlikely that you are going to build a great relationship. So when you know who and what your brand is, that empowers you to sit down with a distribution partner and say, this is what we need from you. If you need to be built in the on-premise and they don't have an on-premise presence, probably not great, but it empowers you to interview them. It should be a two-way process. I want to give you a story. Mid-2020, right after the start of COVID, at that time at my wholesaler, we would have a weekly sales meeting every Monday, and they would run an hour plus. Most of the time in this sales meeting was dedicated to going over all of the new products for that week, which was 12, 15, sometimes 20 new products a week, okay? We'd hand out a packet. It would be a 3 or 4 page outline of all the new products, brewery name, product name, flavor profile, hop combination, ABV, price to retailer, quantity available, other notes. And behind that, we'd have a sell sheet for each of the packet. Maybe 2 or 3 times ever in the 8 years that I had that company, my mom wandered into the office to pick something up. She happens to wander through during this sales meeting. Kind of goofy. I don't think anything of it. Later that afternoon, she calls me up and says, Shane, I want to tell you something. What you're doing is not scalable, okay? There is no way that even your best salespeople can learn, take in, and digest all of that information, much less go out into the market and effectively sell it before it happens again next week. It's not going to happen. And she was right, and it was very empowering to me, even on the distributor side, because it allowed me to admit that the way that we were doing things was exhausting and it was frustrating, okay? And it empowered me to start to take an approach that empowered us to build that scalable long-term value in our business and also in our brand's businesses, and that was more fair to them, okay? Sales reps will gravitate. Distributor teams, their sales teams will gravitate toward the brands that offer this because it makes their job easier. People show up to do this. Look, in today's economy, there are likely other jobs that people could be doing for the same or more money with less work. If they're showing up to sell beer, it's because on some level they want to be successful and because they like it. They like the product, they like doing what they're doing. They want to be successful at it. So if you can empower them to do that more often, they will naturally gravitate towards wanting to sell your brand. I want to hit a few of the key reasons that so many craft brands struggle in distribution. And again, the key point that you need to take from this today, if you take almost nothing else, you need to remember that distributors do not build brands from scratch. You cannot expect them to do that. They scale brands. They are a force multiplier, okay? When a brand walks into a distributor without a plan, you're forcing the distributor to guess what products to lead with, where to sell, how to sell, and they're not going to do that. They're just not. I can tell you when this happens, they're going to put your brand to the side and focus on other brands. The reality of the dynamic for so many of your brands is that you are stuck at that wholesaler, okay? If you can get out, a lot of times it requires a vast sum of money. Right, wrong, or otherwise, which we're certainly not going to litigate here today, that's the dynamic, and you need to remember that. okay? So that means that you've got to take an approach that empowers their success. You cannot just give them something, expect them to figure it out, and then get pissed when they don't figure it out. This is the only time I'm going to cuss today during this seminar, but every distributor has a brand shit list, okay? It is not a written list, but everybody in the distributor is aware of who is on that list. The drivers, the warehouse people, the people in marketing, they all know the brands that aren't offering the tools to be successful, and then on top of that are creating headaches. Instead of providing solutions, they constantly complain and blame and send nasty emails. Once you get onto that list, it is very hard, or if not impossible, to be successful with that distribution partner. So our goal is to get you off of that list. The first step to doing that is realizing that it's all about the approach that you take with your distributors. What winning brands do differently is they show up as partners and not passengers, okay? That means direction, accountability, and support. Nobody's expecting perfection, but they are expecting the baseline fundamentals, okay? If by the end of this seminar you are sitting here and thinking to yourself, I'm not sure what those basic fundamentals look like in practice, I highly encourage you to call, text, or email a brand manager or your point of contacts at some of your distributors and ask them. This will do a couple of things. Unless the relationship is too far gone and broken, or unless they're a lazy bum, which I doubt, they are going to, one, be happy that you are asking them how you can be a better partner. And two, they're probably going to give you some very valuable and insightful information, okay? It takes a little bit of humility to be able to ask that, but the information that you get back from that can be totally change the dynamic to the positive of how you view not only that distributor, but your distributors as a whole. So how do we turn challenges into opportunities? With the right tools, some hard work. There is so much opportunity in the market right now. I continually tell brands this. This is a crucial inflection point in the history of the craft beer segment. You might be asking yourself why that is. Because so many of the brands in craft are not doing the things that we're talking about today. So what that means is if you can start doing them, you're going to differentiate yourself within a distributor's portfolio or to a new distributor in the most powerful way possible. I can tell you from my experience, and I can tell you from the distributors that I continue to talk to, they are begging for these brands, okay? Often they have full craft portfolios, which for the most part are filled with brands that are not offering them these tools and not giving the blueprint for success, so that if you can start doing that, you will stand out like crazy. That means clear value, consistency, and support. Basics, okay? They would love to build success with your brand and forget about 5 other brands that aren't offering those tools, aren't giving them the blueprint, and are causing headaches. They would love to, because there is not a distributor in America who is not looking to continue to drive growth and build brands, especially in the craft beer segment where that has become so rare. They want brands that help them win, and when they find those brands, they invest in them hard. So, what are some of those successful brands doing? It starts with a strong and effective brand strategy. This is the basis for everything else that your brand will do at scale. It's about knowing your consumer, understanding the competition, and having a plan to win. If you cannot answer the 3 questions on this graphic when you leave today and get with your team, today, tomorrow, early next week, you need to start there, okay? Because if you can't answer these, neither can your distributors. Winning brands are built at their core around the answers to these 3 questions. Who is our target consumer? What competing brands are they currently drinking? And how do we get them to switch from our brand, or from their brand to our brand? This will create the foundation of an effective sales pitch to your distribution partners. Because when they go into an account, they will know who they're selling to, who they're selling against, and how to sell. Let's think about it from the perspective of a distributor sales rep. And if, regardless of what level in beer you're at, if you have never been on a ride with a sales rep from a distributor, I highly encourage it, okay? It is a humbling, eye-opening experience. You get a new appreciation for how easy it looks on paper when you're looking at a spreadsheet or an iDig report, and how hard it is to execute in the field. Even if most beer sales reps don't necessarily have the motivation levels of Tiger Woods in his prime on the driving range, they still want to be successful. Often that means 15 plus accounts that they'll have to see in a single day, and even if they have that account mapped out effectively, they may only see 7 or 8 buyers in that day. And often, they are only going to get 30 to 60 seconds to pitch that buyer on their products. So if you expect them to prioritize your brand and products within that limited amount of valuable time they have, you need to give them the tools to sell effectively, okay? Also look at it from the perspective of a buyer, especially at bars and restaurants. They're running a business here, okay? They've got bills, customers, employees. They've got a bar back in the walk-in blowing Coke. They've got a freaking bartender who just called off 32 minutes before their shift and nobody to cover the shift. They have no desire to hear about 17 new rotating releases that you've come out with this month, each with 6 different hop combinations and varietals they've never heard of. They want to know how your product benefits their customer and benefits their business. When you can do this, sales reps are going to want to sell your product. Because the problem is when they go in and they don't have this structure, even if they sell successfully, let's say they come back in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and the buyer says, this went great, I'd like to get it again. I've experienced this 1,000 times, and you tell the buyer, oh, we don't have that anymore, we have 15 other things. And they're like, what, our customers like it, I like it. So not only are you forcing the distributor sales rep to resell from the ground up, you've given them another hurdle of annoying the buyer who's trying to build a business with and offer products to their customers that their customers like, okay? So don't give them that extra hurdle. You want to give them the effective tools because it will make them gravitate to selling your brand. This is what's going to create the foundation of the blueprint that you're going to hand to your distributors to be successful. So let's talk more in depth about what that blueprint looks like, because this is the blueprint that I have seen work time and time again to not only get brands in the door at distributors, but to turn them into portfolio leaders and category leaders. It starts with the 3 pillars of brand success. I want you to think about these as the 3 crucial elements that you need to create your foundation to be distribution ready. And it starts with a brand calendar. This is the foundation for all of your brand strategy. A mistake that so many brands make is that they treat this like a straight up checklist. Here's our products, here's when they're available. When done right, this should be the strategic backbone for everything that your brand does, okay? It aligns production, marketing, sales, distribution into one unified push. It should speak to your brand's core energy and identity. When I used to look at a Blake's Hard Cider brand calendar, I knew what their brand was about. It just oozed the energy, and it kept everybody aligned along every step of the process. If you are not doing this, you are sending mixed signals to every step along the way. Distributors, retailers, and even consumers, okay? Especially distributors and retailers, they use this to know what to expect from your brand. Bless you. Chasing trends can and will kill your consistency as well. I know how tempting this can be to chase the newest style or the newest gimmick, but if the products on your brand calendar do not tie back to your core strategy and your brand's identity, you are causing confusion instead of momentum, and in a crowded market, that is a problem. Brands that win at the highest level consistently, brands like Sierra Nevada, Firestone, Blake's, whatever it is, they have these brand calendars that speak to their core identity. When someone looks at their brand calendar, they get a full sense of the brand immediately. And in a crowded market, that is very crucial. If you're constantly launching and pivoting without that foundational strategy or any kind of strategic arc, you are sending those mixed signals to the market instead of creating momentum. And again, in a crowded market, that is a massive issue. You need to build around your core. You need to create that drumbeat that distributors can march to and that consumers can count on. So we take that brand calendar, and then we take the answer to those 3 crucial questions that we asked a minute ago, and we start to build out your brand strategy. That way, when a distributor walks into an account, they know who they're selling to, how they're selling, what the competition is. They know what products to lead with. The key things that all of this gives your distributor is they can walk into an account. They know what products to lead with. They know who to sell to, how to sell, who they're selling against, why your brand or products are a better sale than the competitors. Most of all, it gives them the plan to create and support mutual success. So let's talk about a real-world example here, Blake's Hard Cider. We launched with Blake's Hard Cider in Western Pennsylvania in early 2017, and we were one of Blake's first few wholesalers, I believe, outside of their home state of Michigan, okay? What this did was it gave me a front row seat to watch this brand turn from an upstart to one of the most well-run, distributor-friendly, successful brands in the country. This was not luck. They did not hit the craft brand lottery, okay? It started with an effective brand calendar rooted in consumer desires and consumer opportunities. They had product development based around those market opportunities that they piled on top of that brand calendar. They had a strong and effective brand identity that they communicated clearly and consistently. And at a higher level, they had seasonal programs and initiatives paired up with that product development that drove deeper brand engagement, okay? It spoke to their brand's core identity. It had a purpose. What they did not do was say, here's a new SKU, sell as much as you can, best of luck with that, and when it doesn't go well, we're gonna email you in 3 months pissed off about it, because that's how you get on that list, and you do not want that because you cannot have success from there. They gave us the blueprint. Goals, expectations, programs, support for those programs. The basics, but very effective. I could sit with my team and tell them exactly how we were going to be successful with Blake's Hard Cider. And I'll tell you how we did it. We went to each sales rep and said, here's a list of all your accounts on your route that are running a competing tap line. For instance, Angry Orchard. You're going to go to each one of those accounts and you're going to give them this very straightforward and effective sales pitch. And when you do, we are going to reward you with incentives if you can do it successfully. The sales pitch was, this is a quality cider. It's made with all real fruit from a third-generation family farm just outside of Detroit. The liquid's better, it tastes better, it's only a few bucks more to your bar for a half keg. You can sell it for an extra $1 a pint, and when you do that, you'll make over $100 of extra profit on this keg. Your customers will like it more, you'll make more money on it. What's not to like? And it worked, and the salespeople knew it worked, so they gravitated to selling it, okay? The mistake that a lot of brands will make is they don't have this in place. They don't have the tools for this sales pitch, but they want to create growth, so they'll fire off incentive money at a distributor sales team and won't get any results from it. The issue that you create for yourself here is that now you're just further highlighting how hard your brand is to sell, because those salespeople come in, they see there's an incentive, they want to make the extra money, they realize how difficult that is, and now they are just more aware of how hard it is to sell your brand. I know that it's well-intentioned, but do not start with incentive money if you don't have that brand strategy in place, because you will be throwing good money after bad. We'll talk about it before we wrap up later, but it is possible for any brand to get to a place where they can answer these questions. You need to start there before you go any further, okay? What Blake's did is they handed us the roadmap to win together, okay? They approached the relationship as partners and not passengers, and they invested in our success. When they gave us that roadmap and invested in our success, it fired me up and it fired our team up. They made our job easier. Shockingly, many of you may not believe this, but distributors do want to be successful, okay? So they look for those brands that make it not only easier for them, but make it more likely. Blake's made our job easier as a distributor because they asked, instead of asking, why is our distributor not doing enough? Why do they suck? They said, what can we do to empower their success? How can we be a better partner that makes our success here more likely? Let me give you an example here. Think about it from the perspective of a distributor brand manager, okay? These people are taking it from both sides. They are taking it from their bosses who are saying, why are you not driving more performance? Why are our brands not doing better? Why is there not more sales growth? They're also taking it from the brands and suppliers. Why are you not giving us more attention? Why are you not creating more growth, more performance? Base levels of appreciation and support for a brand manager can do wonders for your brand. When you leave here today, you should definitely text, email, or call some of your brand managers and just thank them. Just start there. Hey, I had this premonition today. I've now realized how hard you work to create success for us. I very much appreciate that. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to support you. Take them to lunch every month or two. Buy them a beer. Get them a freaking quarter zip with your branding on it, because if you can make these people fans of your brand, it will completely shift the dynamic of your relationship and results. Because when they go to meetings at this distributor, they are going to say, this brand is supporting. You know, they are just going to say good things. When you do the opposite, when you do not provide those tools, when you don't give the blueprint, and then you start to complain and blame, you get yourself onto that list where it is impossible to succeed, and we want to do everything that we can to keep you off of that. Think about it like a romantic partner. If you're blaming them 24/7 and complaining about them, are you right? Maybe. But is it doing anything to create a happier, healthier, more productive relationship? No, it is not, okay? Successful distributors' relationships are built with intention. They do not happen by accident. So how do we work with distributors and not against them? It starts by knowing your role. You've got to know who and what you are as a brand, because you cannot be everything to everybody. You got to know where your brand fits. A huge mistake that I see brands make is that they try and keep up and compete with the biggest and most successful brands in a portfolio, especially when they're new to a distributor. This screams insecurity, and it comes from not knowing who and what your brand is. A few months ago, I was working with a local distillery, and they were launching a new RTD canned cocktail line. They were also pitching a new distributor who sold Surfside RTDs. And they wanted me to create a presentation for them that would show this distributor that from day one, they would be as successful and as valuable as Surfside. And I said, guys, if we do that, they're gonna think I'm a lunatic, and they're going to think you're lunatics. Because what it does is it tells them that you don't know who and what you are, that you don't have a realistic expectation of success, much less any kind of plan to get there and make that success a reality. And when you don't have that, it makes you incredibly hard to believe in, because that distributor is going to know that success is extremely unlikely because you don't know how to get there or what it looks like. You need to know who you are, what you are, and where you fit, because when you know those things, it makes you easier to believe in and want to sell for a distributor. You need to be realistic about your strengths, what your flaws are, because there is so much success that can come in life when you know what your strengths are, what value you offer based on those strengths, and then can find a role to deliver on that value and become the best that you possibly can in that role. Let me give you a real life example. When I was in college, I was the student manager for the men's basketball team at Duquesne University. When I was a senior, TJ McConnell was a freshman, okay? If you Google a picture of TJ McConnell in high school, he's about 5'5", 130 pounds. Now, he's grown since then, but he is still not, no offense to TJ, the picture of LeBron James-esque athleticism. But what he has is he knows who and what he is, okay? So he plays 2 years at Duquesne, decides to transfer to University of Arizona for a bigger challenge for his last 2 years, was a very good player on a very good team, but did not get drafted. So he goes to summer camp with the Philadelphia 76ers. The mistake that so many players make in going to the NBA and making that transition is they feel a pressure or a need to be a scorer because they don't know who and what they are as a player. There are only so many elite scorers in the league, and there are only so many roles on each team for scorers. So When that's not authentically you and you try and be that anyway, you're likely to flame out of the league. TJ knew who and what he was and is. He's a great passer, a great defender. He has great energy. He's a very hard worker, great locker room guy. And to date, he has signed $90 million worth of NBA contracts because he knows who he is and what he is. And the same goes for your brand. If you go to a new distributor and you say to them, we've got this great West Coast IPA that's one of our core products and we want to push it. The distributor may come back to you and say, we've got 13 more established brands that also have a core West Coast IPA. We don't see a lot of reason to push this right now. There's no benefit to us. You can do one of two things. You can storm out and say, no, thank you, we're going elsewhere. Or you can say, where is a role that we can fit into? That distributor may come to you and say, you make a great Czech Pilsner. We've got a real opportunity to sell a lot of Czech Pilsner on draft. Why don't we start there, create some foundational success, and then we can build out from there. You can do either one of those two things. At least if you walk out, you know what the expectation is of the role that you can fill at this distributor. Okay, and that allows both of you to make an educated decision on what you want to do. But you have to know who and what you are before you can do that, because otherwise you'll get into that relationship and you will get frustrated very quickly. Let's talk about being a strong brand partner in general. This is something that I want to say a couple of times because it hits very hard. Most brands do not fail because they make bad product. They fail because they are hard to work with. Okay, it can be tough to stomach, but it's true. When I say hard to work with, you don't have the tools, you don't offer those support or that blueprint, and things spiral. It's just something that you need to realize. It can be hard to hear, but the empowering thing is that it's fixable. Most brands do not fail because they make bad product. They fail because they are hard to work with. You need to think like a partner and not a vendor. Please, for the love of God, stop sending emails that ask, why aren't you ordering more? When are you going to order again? Why are your orders not bigger? Those are vendor emails. They are not partner emails. You need to invest in communication, consistency, accountability, support, okay? You build trust and you make yourself become that brand that a distributor knows that they can depend on when trying to create success. You need to shift that mindset, and instead of thinking, why is our distributor not doing more? What more could we be doing to support our distributors? Let me give you a dating analogy, okay? Let's start with alignment. If I go to dinner tonight and I start talking to a woman who is very eligibly single, she's a nuclear engineer, she is a swimsuit model on the side, she likes to hike through the wilderness and camp in that wilderness 2 weeks out of every month. Her and I would not do well in a dating relationship. I just don't like to sleep in the wilderness. I don't like to camp. It's not my preference. Doesn't mean I'm not a good partner. It doesn't mean she's not a good partner. It means there's no alignment. The same goes for your distributors. You cannot just take the first distributor that says yes. You need to know who and what you are and how you fit with who and what they are. Do not take the first person that says yes. You need to go into that meeting knowing what you need to make your brand successful. Okay, we talked about giving them a clear reason to invest earlier. Think about it like you've got a tech startup and you go to investors and you say to them, I need $1 million. They're going to ask you what your business plan is to successfully scale that business. If you don't know, they're not going to invest. If you say, I need $1 million, they're going to ask you for return on investment that should be expected. If you don't know, they're not going to want to invest. But when you do know, it empowers you to ask of them certain things. And it builds a foundation for that relationship that starts off as a two-way street. Okay, that's an incredibly powerful dynamic early on. The other thing as it relates to a dating analogy, we talked earlier about consistently blaming and complaining about your partners. I've known people, I'm sure we all have, that constantly complain about their partner. Oh, you know, my wife sucks, she never does, whatever it is. Are you right? Maybe, but you're not creating a better relationship with that approach. It is powerful, maybe we've all experienced it, when someone that you're with decides to pick up your favorite dinner, decides to buy tickets to your favorite concert, whatever it is. But when they start doing those things, it makes you want to do the same for them. Unless the relationship's too far gone, or unless you're a lazy bum, or they are, if they start doing those things, it makes you want to do them and starts building that relationship to the positive in a compounding fashion. You have to be willing to put your ego aside and be humble. I'm going to say something here, and it's something that I've struggled with earlier in my career. Do you care more about your ego and proving something, or do you care more about the success of your brand and your business? One more time. Do you care more about your ego and proving something, or do you care more about the success of your brand and your business? Because until you get to the point where you care more about and prioritize the success of your brand and your business, you are going to struggle with a lot of the things that we've talked about here today. It takes some soul searching. It can be hard work, but it is worth it because it is the way that you will maximize your brand's potential and success. You have to be willing to ask yourself, what kind of partner do I want to be? And that comes with asking, what am I not doing right now that I should be? So to wrap this all up here, the key conceptual takeaway that I want everybody to take from today is that distribution is your most powerful growth engine. When you align strategy, execution, and your distributor's priorities, you unlock sustainable scale. You unlock that potential and success that so many of you know is right there, but can't quite figure out how to get to, okay? Or that you knew was right there and have started to stop losing the faith is possible. I'm telling you, it is possible if you take the right approach. Some of the key steps here starts with assessing your brand's foundation. Does your brand offer clear value and that blueprint to create success? It starts with the answer to those 3 core questions that I asked earlier. Who's your target audience? What competing brands are they currently drinking? And how do we get them to switch from those competing brands? If you feel like, oh my God, there's no way, we don't have an answer, any brand is capable of doing some hard work and evolving and making some tweaks to get to a place where that is the case. I highly encourage you when you leave to start there if you feel like you cannot answer these questions. Next, align with your distribution partners. Set shared goals and put a plan in place to create momentum together. Make the priority, how can we empower their success? Because when you make that the number one that you put in your approach to your relationships, you will be blown away at the levels of success that it will create for your brand without even realizing it. Most of all, ask yourself, what could I be doing to be a better partner? What am I not doing that I need to be? What could I be doing to be a better partner? Because if you can take ownership of the mistakes that you've made to get yourself in a bad spot, it can be a powerful inflection point to be better moving forward. I know that it's a lot of negative energy in the segment right now. I know that there's a lot of doom and gloom, but I am telling you that with some hard work and the right approach, there really is so much opportunity in craft beer right now. I know it's the end of the seminar. I hope that you got something valuable and impactful from this. I appreciate everybody's time. So for the questions, can you negotiate with a distributor on the % of margin they are willing to take? If so, what are some strategies in negotiating this? Great question. As part of your brand strategy, you should know realistically at least a small ballpark of what your product needs to be on the shelf. That's part of knowing who you're selling against. I did some basic work for an orange juice brand 6 months ago. Very nice ladies who were starting a brand, and they had $8 a bottle orange juice, okay? Whatever Dole or Tropicana is, it's like $3. Whatever your sales pitch is, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a brand strategy that allows you to take drinkers from those established competitors. So, you need to know what price point you want to be at, right? Because that's going to be critical. I would start there and work backwards. You want to put yourself in a position where you're being successful, because if you are taking too thin of a margin, it's not going to be a relationship that is successful for you. You're not going to be fully invested in the relationship, because no matter how much you sell, you're not going to be making as much money as you should, right? And part of that is taking that empowered approach to a distributor and saying, we are trying to build a successful business. This is where we need to be. I think that approach coming in is so powerful, because when a distributor knows that you know what your business objectives are. You know, the amount of brands that I worked with that had no clue what their numbers were, so I had no interest in benefiting them because I was more worried about my nut. When you can take the approach where a distributor knows that you know who and what you are and what you need to be successful, They are invested in doing that. So yeah, I would tell them what margin you're looking for. And the final thing I'll say on this is when you come to a point where you say, look, we need this margin because we need to be at this price point on the shelf, a distributor is more likely to want to work with you than when you just say 32% is not enough, I need 38% or you're an asshole, right? So be able to articulate why you need to hit that margin, why it gets you to that right price point. I think that can be very powerful. The next question, for a brand with 4 year-round core beers, how many seasonal releases is reasonable versus overwhelming? Another great question. I prefer 1 a quarter in terms of seasonals. Now you can have other limited release products. As you develop that deeper brand engagement, you can go into an account that's familiar with your core beers and has had some success with your seasonals and then start to introduce limited products. But I would say that you need to take it in a 3-tier approach where you start with those core year-round beers, you build on that with seasonals, and then you finish that off with limited release products. The industry got a little bit away from itself when we were constantly trying to push rotating products, and they would go into accounts and start and lead with those limited products. Once you do that, you cannot go back to the cores at that account. It's better to start from a foundation where you say, here's our cores, and you have success in an account with those cores. And then once you have a success in that account with cores, then you go to the seasonals. I would say once a quarter, maybe 5 or 6. From a distributor's perspective, it was always easier for me to execute and manage when it was just once a quarter. I always broke down our business by once a quarter. I'd have a way to slot in your seasonal. Side note, I didn't mention it much, pre-sell. I love pre-selling because consumers or customers, accounts, are more likely to agree to spend money 3 months from now than spend it right now. And it allows a distributor to know everything is going in. So if you say, look, on June 1st, we're going to release our summer seasonal, that distributor can pre-sell and everything goes out within a week or 2, right? So they'll go to accounts and say, this product's coming out June 1st. Within a week or 2, we're gonna deliver it to you. It makes life so much easier for a distributor. And they can pair your core products onto that delivery, but they can come in and just know it's coming in and out. So pre-sales are big, and I think for seasonals. Next question, what are some effective strategies to be a model brand partner to our distributor when our primary competitors are also in the same price book? I'd answer those 3 questions, because if you can't answer those 3 questions, I'll use the Angry Orchard example with Blake's. If you walk into a bar, okay, and you see someone who you think is your target consumer, if you go up to them and in 30 to 60 seconds can't get them to switch from Angry Orchard to Blake's, what do you have? I mean, honestly. So that's where I would start, because you need to give them clear reasons to invest. And it can go deeper on the level of distribution. You can say, look, we have better sales support, we have better incentives, whatever it is. But what is your differentiation point from those other competing brands? Because beyond just your distributor portfolio, if you can't answer those in a crowded market in general, I think you're going to continue to struggle. But you can, even if you don't have the answers now, I'm telling you, there are ways to figure it out and evolve your brand to where you do. How do you ensure your brand is a priority for a distributor that also owns or has investments into other breweries in their portfolio? Yeah, that's a tough one. I would say it's something that I considered as a distributor owner at certain points. I would say that if your brand is offering enough value and tools, you just make it hard to ignore. Because in a market, and especially craft beer, the segment that has so many brands and so few that offer those tools and support, if you can differentiate and stand out, you're just going to become another asset for that distributor. They're always looking for more brands, right? So if they own or have ownership stakes in 8 other brands, you'll be the 9th. There's not a distributor out there that's gonna say, well, 8 good brands, that's enough for us. Be that 9th. You cut out the noise. I know it's hard, but you cut out the noise and you just focus on being the best brand partner that you can be, and the rest will take care of itself. How do you calculate a budget on incentives for your distributor? Would that be a percentage of revenue? If so, is there an industry benchmark? I always worked off of $1 a CE. Some brands go heavier in $2, some less. I will tell you this, if you are committing to an incentive budget or any other kind of promotional budget with a distributor, it should be co-opted. You need to die on that hill. So if you're committing $1 a CE, so should they. The nice part about this approach is that let's say you're going to sell 20,000 CEs this year. Okay, you go into 2026 and you say we're going to sell 20,000 CEs. We're going to commit $1 a CE, and we would like you to as well. That means that you're working off a budget, ideally, of $40,000. So you can then backward engineer everything that you need from that budget to make that 20,000 CEs realistic. If you sit there and think $40,000 is not enough to get us to our goal, you can up the budget a little bit, but even if you get to $2 a CE and you still don't feel like it's enough to get to your goal, go back to those 3 core questions, because you don't have a strong enough brand identity to get you there. But the industry benchmark for me would be $1 a CE. Always, I would say pretty much demand that you're getting some form of reciprocation on that support from distributors. And I always say anything you're spending in the market, if you go to a baseball stadium and you sponsor the bar in center field, whatever it is, I would be on my distributors' butts to co-op that with you. When you went to Arizona and got overwhelmed and bought a familiar non-local product, Distro knows this happens often. How do small brands collectively change that mindset? I would say that, like, as a consumer, I want to support something that's smaller and local, or that I, feel like is not necessarily a massive corporation, but I still need to be able to know why it's differentiated in the market. The struggle, and again, it was a false positive for the industry for so long, was that we got to a point where it was, this is new, this is local, it's really good beer. I hate to tell you this, good beer is just table stakes now. Like, everybody makes good beer, so what makes it pop off the shelf a little bit? Because then you can use whatever, like, I'm a smaller brand, I'm local, this is artisan. You can take it to the next level, and it exponentially increases the power of that differentiation, but you have to have something on a base level. When I will look at that shelf, and there's 68 different hazy IPAs that don't necessarily stand out against each other, that's where I struggle as a consumer. I want to support those kind of brands. Just give me the basic tools to make that a reality. How do you deal with a distributor raising price to retail because of missed potential? Why is pricing top down, not bottom up with distributors? A good question. You need to know where you fit in the market. When going to a new distributor, I would put anything and everything that you see fit into a contract. If you know where you need to be in the market in terms of price point, I would put that in a contract. We had brands that would set a delivery minimum, right? So if we're going to deliver you product on our truck to your warehouse, you need to order $20,000 worth of product once a month. You need to see at least 50% of our off-premise retail accounts every single week. Whatever it is, you can put it into a contract. And as a distributor, that always signaled to me that that brand knew what they were doing. And honestly, I would instantly respect that brand more, because I'd be like, oh, they've got their stuff together, okay? Anything and everything you want to put into a contract, I would try and put in there. And you can put it, like, again, we had those, if you're not seeing 50% of our retail accounts once a month, the contract's out. Like, we're just out of the contract. Not everybody will agree to that necessarily, but you need to know where you should sit price point wise, so that you can tell them, look, we're at 32%. If we go higher, we're not going to be able to sell at the market, because even if we have a differentiated product, the price is way too high. You're hurting our business. You need contracts, okay, on both sides, distributor and supplier. The amount of people that have gotten burned on contracts because they sign a weak contract or don't have a contract and then think, well, this will just go well, we'll never need it. You need it. I'll tell you, I lost a $500,000 brand 2 years into our existence because I thought a secondary contract was fine and it would never be an issue. It's always an issue, okay? It's not ideal, but you're gonna need it. So I would put something into that contract that, I know it's tough when you're already in there, but put into that contract that protects your pricing. And I would just address it to your distributor as like, look, this is where we're going to be successful at this price point. If you keep raising it, you're going to hurt the success of our brand. Are we trying to create success together or not? And I think that if they know that you're bought in, that you know your stuff and you're bought into being a success, that they should be willing to listen to that. Also, you know, I'm not going to say some distributors suck, but some relationships take a turn where it's just not savable and the dynamic's gone. So it might be that as well. But a good distributor who wants to be successful with you should be willing to work with you on pricing if you know your stuff. How frequently should you be talking to your distributors? Every day. I mean, text them good night, call them, ask them how their weekend was. Your distributor is your consumer, because your distributor is who is in the market every day, facing retailers and facing the customers. All you need to worry about is your distributor. If you take care of your distributors, they will take care of everything else in that market for you. We used to have distributors that would come in and run sales competitions. They would hand out like, whoever sells the most this month wins an Oculus. Whoever gets the most new placements, whatever it is. It's a $200 Oculus or plasma TV, and the 26-year-old sales rep who's playing mini golf on Oculus with his buddies is going to sell your product every single time he walks into an account because you're taking care of them on a low level. So if you can do the little things to make them feel appreciated and supported, I can guarantee you the rest of it is going to take care of itself. What qualities define a good brand manager? What are reasonable expectations from the supplier? This can be a tough one because if the relationship wasn't built on this solid foundation, it's going to take some time to fix. So let's say you start bringing these tools in the next month or so. Your brand manager is not going to wake up and automatically flip. It's going to take some consistent effort to turn the dynamic of the relationship. But the qualities, do they listen? Are they taking what you're giving them and trying to enact them and drive success for your brand? If you say, we've got all these great new plans and tools and strategies, and they're not listening, they're probably either not a great brand manager or the dynamic's taking a turn. I hate to rely on that dating analogy, but again, it doesn't mean you're not a great partner, it doesn't mean they're not a great partner, but sometimes it just doesn't work, and you can feel that in the dynamic, right? Are they listening to you? Do they care about your brand? I will say that there may be a few months where you have to do the work and not necessarily get that in return before you start to change the dynamic, because like I said, if you take all this approach tomorrow, they're not going to wake up and say, oh great, they're a whole new brand. It's just going to take some consistent work to prove and build that trust. But I find it hard to believe in the craft segment especially, that if you're not doing the things that we're talking about today consistently, that over time it's not going to change the dynamic of your relationship and start to get more of their attention and get them more bought in. Like I said, I know there's a lot of negative doom and gloom messaging in the segment, but there is a lot of potential to be had. A lot of it, you got to be humble for a while and do some work without the results, but it is still possible. And yeah, that's all the questions, and I appreciate the time today. Thank you.